All right, this is True Patriot '09. Just wanted to do a quick review on basically inspecting your used firearm very thoroughly before you buy it and take it home. And I'm going to tell you a little story about something that happened to me last night that has never happened to me in a million years. And I never would have guessed that it would have happened. And I'm not glad that it happened, but in a sense I am, because my wife and our little girl were not at home at the time. Last night, or yesterday, I was going to pick up my daughter from daycare. And I carry, and I've done a video on this before, it's called a tactical man purse. You know, it's a small little bag that you kind of throw over your shoulder. Well, this is my off-duty weapon. This is my duty weapon. Okay? So, I had this gun in the back of my bag with the magazine. Okay? Now, both of these firearms have been checked. They are both unloaded. They have no magazines, and they have no magazines in them. Chambers have been checked multiple times. So, I've bought 2 used revolvers before, and that's the only thing I can really remember buying used firearm-wise. Well, yesterday I go to pick up my bag. Well, somehow the buckle, the big heavy-duty buckle, had come undone. So when I go to pick up my bag, this firearm was in the back of the bag, and it was out of the holster. So when I go to pick it up, the strap comes undone. The bag falls from about chest high, and I'm about 5'10", 5'11". When it falls this way, and I'll tell you how I know that in a minute. So it fell this way, and the gun went off. So I called one of my friends who's a Tier 3 Glock armorer. And he knows everything there is to know about a Glock. You know, he's a Tier 3 Glock armorer. So I called him, and he said, you know, there's no way. There's drop safeties. There's something mechanically wrong with that particular firearm. So when I initially bought this gun, I took it to him, and he was busy that day, and he put it on his desk, and he took everything apart, took the trigger apart, he took everything out of it, and said, look, somebody has polished the trigger on it. I would be safe shooting it. I would, you know, it's a Glock. I would be safe shooting it, but I would not issue it to one of our officers, and we've got about 140 or so officers at our department. So he said I wouldn't issue it, but I would use it. Everything looks functional on it. Well, last night after that happened, it did shoot a hole through our ceiling. I checked the attic. I checked the metal roof. I checked all that stuff. Everything was fine. Hollow points, I'd say, once it went through. We have a house, an older house that was built in the 60s, so we've done a lot of upgrades to the house, but with the plaster ceiling, with as thick as the insulation is, it didn't. I couldn't find any holes, so I'd say that hollow point kind of stopped somewhere in that insulation upstairs. But I took this gun apart, which is my off-duty. I took this gun apart, which is my duty weapon. And when I took them apart, I kept realizing that I could set the action or the trigger on this with the slide and everything off. I could move, and it would stop the trigger. It would set the trigger. Well, if you look at this particular gun, you'll notice right behind the trigger here, right here where my finger is at, moving back there, you can see there's a block. It's a trigger safety. Okay, that trigger safety hangs down, which basically means you have to depress the center part of the trigger here before the trigger comes back. If not, if you press on the edge, you can see that small block back there. Now, if I press it, it moves that, and it's got 2 safeties. It's got another safety in the back here, and then it's got a plunger safety, which pushes up this little bitty metal plunger that's on a spring, and it allows the firing pin to go. Well, that's part of the drop safety. Well, if you look at my off-duty weapon, there again, I bought it used. I don't make modifications to guns because I'm not a gunsmith. The most I've ever done was polished a feed ramp on a 1911. If you look at this particular gun, look behind the trigger. Nothing. Whoever owned this gun prior to me wanted to make the wanted to make the trigger pull a little bit easier, not have to worry about that center trigger safety. So what happens? I don't have to depress that center trigger safety before the gun will actually fire. And like I said, I did check the guns prior. So you can see that it will cock, okay? But there is absolutely no bar, no trigger safety behind the center safety on the trigger. These are supposed to be safe action pistols. Someone basically took a safety out of this. So when this gun fell, it hit with enough force on the hardwood floors to where when it hit, there was enough pressure when it hit that maybe the magazine that was in the pocket with this firearm could have possibly barely touched the edge of this, could have done something which made it fire, which made it go off. So last night I ordered a new trigger so I could have that installed. There again, I'm not a Glock armorer, I'm not a gunsmith, so I will have a Glock armorer install it for me at work. But that's what made that gun go off. And you can clearly see between that and that, you can see a huge difference. Right there behind the trigger, someone shaved that. Someone shaved it on my off-duty weapon. I bought it used. So needless to say, my wife last night said, look, you will never buy a used firearm again. Next gun you get, it better be brand new. Which doesn't bother me that she said buy new guns, not used guns, which typically I don't do anyway. But these are supposed to be safe action pistols. I've always had Glocks. I like Glocks. I love Glocks. They shoot great. And someone, for some reason, decided to shave the safety off the back of this, whereas you can see with this gun, that trigger safety is there because it's a duty weapon. It is something that is issued to me, and that's the way it's supposed to be. That's the way Glock designed them. Glock did not design that trigger safety to be shaved off like someone did. It's upsetting that I allowed myself to buy a firearm and not do a proper check on it. So my video today is, if you're going to buy a used firearm, there's nothing wrong with buying used firearms, but if you're going to buy one, make sure that that firearm is mechanically sound. Take it to a gunsmith, look it over. If you feel comfortable enough to look it over and you know what you're looking for, then do it. I felt comfortable enough, but whoever looks at the back of the trigger to realize someone has shaved that trigger safety off. So you can hit anywhere on this trigger, and with enough pressure, it will actually set the firing pin off because there is no center trigger safety. So that trigger safety is intact. That trigger safety is not. So until I get a new trigger in this particular firearm, I will not carry one in the pipe. So I'm going to have to remember and train now that if I ever have to use this off duty, I'm going to have to rack a shell, which I've talked before about how action is always quicker than reaction. So that's just something I'm going to have to do because I don't feel comfortable enough keeping a round chambered. I do feel comfortable enough carrying it, but not with one chambered because of that trigger safety, which is really upsetting. I called my gun shop, or well, the manager of the gun shop last night, and talked to him about it. He was a little bit upset about it too because they missed it and I missed it, and it was something so small that I didn't even think to look at it. So if you buy a used firearm, make sure it's mechanically sound. Don't get hurt because of someone else thinking they're a gunsmith and doing something with a gun, not knowing the consequences of how important that safety is behind the trigger. So this is True Patriot 09. You know, I always say this, and I always will. Let's thank our first responders. Let's thank our military personnel. Let's pray for them. Let's pray for their families, for their safety. Let's pray for the ones in Tennessee who were affected by the wildfires. The wildfires all up and down the East Coast. Let's just pray for this nation, and that God helps us to bring this nation back to what it should be, where everyone gets along, we prosper in everything we do, and there are opportunities for everyone, no matter color, race, gender. It doesn't matter. There's an opportunity for you here in America, and let's just make this country strong again. This is True Patriot '09. I hope you enjoyed the video. I hope it's informative, and please, 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 when you buy a used firearm, check the mechanics of that firearm to make sure it is mechanically sound. Thank you for watching True Patriot '09.